We'll record the meeting and then we're gonna post online, YouTube, all of that, so we tell your neighbors if they miss this, that they can watch it online as well. Well, we're gonna start, we're in everyone's time for this evening. I wanna thank you all for coming out. I'm Michelle McAndrew, I'm Borough Manager. We have Ashley Brown, Assistant Manager and Finance Officer. We have Ralph Zatlin, our Public Service Director, Fire Chief. And then to the left of me, we have Ryan, who's from Gateway Engineers. And then solicitor for the evening, Ashley Wagner. Thank you all for attending. I really appreciate you coming out for this educational session. So this is purely informational in regards to the possibility of council implementing a stormwater authority. There is no set decision yet. That will come up at a later time. The council will vote on it, and if it passes and proceeds, if it fails, then it doesn't go through. So rather get in front of residents to prepare you and give you information if this does happen. So Churchill Borough and Council itself has been talking about the possibility of a stormwater fee, which Ryan will go into very specific details as to what it is whenever he presents. But Council and Borough have been talking about this since about 2016. So this isn't a new thought or idea that Council has been tossing around. It has been on the table for a while. So as a municipality, we have this state and federal government unfunded mandate. We are required to maintain and repair, make sure all of our storm sewers and sanitary sewers are properly maintained. So they're telling us that we have to take care of this. At the same time, this is an unfunded mandate. So there are no specific funds coming from the state and federal government that goes towards repairing the storm sewer. So at this time, all of the money that's going to repair storm sewers is coming out of the borough's general fund. You might be aware of a sewer fee that you have that comes on your bill. So sewer fee that goes directly just towards sewer repair. It's a little bit similar to that. Okay.
It also brings in, Wilkinson Joint Water Authority too.
Correct.
That's strictly for sanitary.
Correct. This is a sanitary, not stormwater.
Next slide. Currently, the borough has there's one thing I did forget to bring up, and it was on one of the previous slides. I thought I had it in another spot, but currently there is a rather large number of outstanding repairs the borough has in front of us, roughly about $1 million of repairs. Hi, welcome. Hi. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Currently, there's about $1 million of outstanding repairs that we have in front of us with storm sewer repairs. Some of them are sinkholes that have been popping up that could be on the street or could be in someone's backyard. And we have been dealing with the outstanding repairs for a number of time because the emergency repairs that we have with storm sewer continue to increase because our infrastructure is aging. So when looking at the possibility of how we can meet our financial needs and fix this outstanding balance that we have, initially you want to look at, the economic development in the area is this. Well, as we're all aware, we are significantly lacking in economic development in our community. We are heavily residential. So the borough relies primarily on real estate taxes that come in. This is kind of a unique situation. It's not that common with municipalities, and it's a little bit more burdensome to a borough's financial situation. We could also possibly increase the tax millage. However, if we did that, everyone that is contributing to the flow of water to our storm sewers would not have to directly pay for what they're contributing. So if we increase, for example, if a tax millage would occur, that would just be residential taxpayers having to pay for everyone's contribution of water flow to the storm sewer system. With the stormwater authority and possible fee, the non-exempt entities in the borough would have to then pay for what they're contributing to the storm sewers as well.
For a quick clarification, so the non-exempt would be churches, schools, yes, things like that, okay.
Nonprofits.
Nonprofits, okay, that's just clarification, thank you.
Up in your one packet, there is a map. There's also a graph that breaks down. It is a little outdated. 2021 municipalities that have a stormwater fee, but some of them that you might be more aware of is Monroeville. So Monroeville's had a stormwater fee for a significant time. Mount Lebanon, they also have a stormwater fee. Fox Chapel, Oakmont, Baldwin Borough, Etna, and O'Hara Township. So this isn't just a new concept that we're thinking of and that nobody else is doing. A lot of the boroughs and municipalities that you're familiar with have implemented this as well. So ultimately, if council were to approve this authority, we want to continue with our mission, vision, and value. We want to protect people, keep you safe, keep the infrastructure safe, keep our streets safe, water's clean, and also our due diligence for protecting the future of our residents and the borough. With that being said, I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, who's going to go into a little bit more detail about exactly what the Stormwater Authority is. And at the end, we'll have a time for questions.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, everybody. Michelle mentioned I'm Ryan Burnham of Gateway Engineers. Dennis Flynn is from Gateway as well. He's the borough engineer. And we are going to discuss in more detail what Michelle introduced us to with the Stormwater Utility Fund. So a couple things we're going to cover here, just some general knowledge about when we say stormwater, what are we talking about? We're going to talk about the cost of stormwater as that relates to the borough, and then some of the projects and budgets that require the funding that we're discussing with this utility fund. Some funding options, and we'll dig into details of what the stormwater utility really is. The idea is that we'll walk away tonight with a better idea of what it means when you hear stormwater utility fund and what the purpose of it is. So there's a illustration on the screen there. Help us talk about when we say stormwater, what are we really talking about? So there's the left side of the screen does not have the sort of the pins on it, right? You can see that there's houses, there's streets, there's some pipes underground, and there's a light blue pipe that goes down in the middle of the road. You can see there's houses that are connected to it. That blue pipe represents stormwater sewer pipe. And what it's doing is it's collecting rainfall from the roof of the house as it goes into the gutter, into those pipes, tie into that main pipe from the road, and it empties out at 3/5. You see it goes directly from the hard surfaces like the roads, the driveways, the roofs, and goes right into the stream basically. So there's no treatment of water. It just goes right to the stream. So when we're talking about stormwater and some of the things that require funding for stormwater, it's helping to prevent pollution getting into it. That's a key. The other side of the screen there talks about combined systems, there's a sanitary sewer, treatment plant, that kind of stuff. So there's no treatment on the stormwater side. That's the thing to remember about it. So what does stormwater look like in the borough of Churchill? So currently there's about 12 miles of storm sewer pipe, okay, which is basically all underground stuff that you don't even think about when you're driving through the municipality. 12 miles of that, roughly 400 inlets, so the place where the water gets into the pipe. So along the road there's inlet, there's grates there the water gets into, that puts it into the storm sewer system. This infrastructure is there to help convey the runoff, as we talked about that illustration, that eventually gets to the creeks and streams. And the system is there to help prevent flooding and pollution of the waterways here. The borough is accountable to the residents and has to comply with state and federal agencies to keep the system working condition, make sure it's maintained, and that the borough is doing what they need to do to keep the upkeep of the system itself. So if we talk about cost of stormwater management, a couple of things I want to touch on here. Michelle mentioned the unfunded mandates. That comes from a program called MS4. That's an acronym. It means Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. If I tie it back to that illustration, that side of the illustration we were talking about, the stormwater goes from the hard surfaces to the pipe to the stream. That's completely separate from the storm sewer system. Okay, so it's its own set of pipes and infrastructure strictly for stormwater. So that's just an acronym for the stormwater program. And what that MS4 is a permit that the municipality has that allows them to discharge stormwater. With that permit, they have to comply with all the regulations of that permit. And that includes things like educating the public. It includes things like having opportunities for public to be involved in stormwater management through volunteer opportunities and things like that. And as well as going out and mapping the system, testing the water as it comes out of the outfall. All these different things are tied into this permit. And then the big piece is everything has to be documented. And a report gets sent to each year to say what the borough has done to comply with this permit. They can come back and say, this report looks great, but show us documentation. You could do everything right, cross every T, dot every I. If you don't have the documentation, it's assumed that it didn't occur. Okay? If that doesn't happen, then there's fines and penalties and things like that. The state then levies on the borough for penalty for non-compliance.
Brian, just for people that maybe aren't familiar, what's DEP?
Department of Environmental Protection. Right. They're the ones that enforce the permit for the borough.
Thank you.
Well, another piece of MS4, as far as the permit goes, it's a 5-year permit, and every 5 years they tend to add on more requirements. Okay, different things that get added on to the permit. The most recent one is what they call PRPs, or pollutant reduction plans. These tend to be bigger projects to help reduce the amount of sediment that's getting into the stream. So things like to prevent that, there's things like stabilizing stream banks with different techniques, put water into the center of the stream, using different BMPs from an engineering standpoint that keep the water away from the tank, eliminate all the sediment getting into the stream. So there's design, there's permitting, there's construction for bigger projects.
Right.
BMP is the best management practice. It's basically just a strategy to address soil environment. BMP can be on there's lots of ones in Churchill, like you'll see into housing development going to something that's typically a farm that's a BMP. In the case of a pollutant reduction plan, there might be a big log that gets secured in bedrock or less on the bank of the stream. That's considered BMP. Different rock structures that support the water in the center of the stream. That's considered a BMP. So there's different strategies for water. So outside of MS4, there's also capital improvement projects. There's operations and maintenance of aging infrastructure. I'll give some more Churchill specific details of this, but we're talking about aging infrastructure and maintenance. This picture on the right kind of depicts that. You have pipes that are collapsing over time, right? This material, they call it Bristol. It was put in 50, 60 years ago, maybe longer than that. It doesn't last that long. Time goes on, it begins to collapse, it deteriorates, and rust, it gets old, and things like that, and then create same hole with a bigger problem down it. Problem. And then finally, stormwater pollution and flooding. It's all sort of reflect what we talked about with the same stormwater management. All right, so, back to MS4 real quick, just to give you another highlight of that. So I kind of talked about this in the last slide, but, public education, public involvement, testing the water, all those different things. There's a piece of the municipality taking care of their ground and property, making sure that they're doing properly, stormwater management. So, the salt zone, you have to make sure all the salt is back into the salt zone. Salt getting. So all this stuff needs plans around it, and all this documented, it all gets treated. Big program. We have to track progress and measurable goals, part of that reporting process. We submit to DEP every year, like I said, talked about the pollutant reduction plans, and the state government. DEP comes around about every 5 years for compliance inspections. For the most part, as long as municipalities show the documentation of what they're doing and show the plans, DEP will come in and say, show me all your documentation for the last 5 years. They go through mine or in digital files, things like that. To make sure. And they go outside and go to public works areas and the salt zone, fueling station, all these different things. They make sure you're doing what you need to do, file a permit of all these different facilities. And if you're not, it becomes a violation. The violation leads to penalties. Okay, so getting back into Churchill specific items here.
Or profession.
When was the last time that DEP came in for an inspection?
Was 4 years ago, I think.
Yeah, we're due.
So you're doing now?
We're due, yeah, coming up on cycle.
Yeah.
And then off of her question, have we had any violations since?
You've not had-
We have not had any.
Follow-up question, is there a rating that boroughs receive for their permit?
Not so much a rating, when there's compliance, I think it's a big form that people about, just, yes or no, don't, they put the comments of what they think. And then there's usually a 30-day response period, and then in terms of the lockdown violation, it's not so much like you're a gold standard, you're a silver standard, you're progress. I mean,
And then my follow-up question is the MVP, Maximum Extent Possible calculator, that is formulated by, I believe it's the Department of Environmental Protection. That's used for municipalities because they understand this is a big financial undertaking. And so there's a calculator that municipalities can use to determine what realistically they can achieve in addressing their stormwater management. Have we used that and where are we at in that calculation?
so, we look at it from the standpoint of what they call bingo meeting district, extent practicable. So from our standpoint, we work with the borough to say, let's get this done, budgets that meet what the borough is able to do, okay? It's not so much of hey, you need $1 million next year. No, that's not gonna work, right? That's not practice. So we work with the borough to come up with what we think is appropriate based on what is coming up from an board standpoint, what the next inspection is gonna be, something and provide. We think that being able to get what it's doing.
And do you feel that you all have done it? And the borough has responded to your request?
And one point regarding that is that based on the MS4 requirements, the requirements are not related to actually infrastructure. Failing infrastructure, that isn't necessarily even connected with that. What the need is looking at minimum control measures, whether or not you're hitting those minimum control measures that are outlined by MS4. So that's where it's kind of two parallel tracks. The regulations or the MS4 regulations, and then these capital projects that have been identified just through CCTV or technical forms have identified these other repairs. So those are kind of two separate paths.
I can understand. I just want to ensure that it's clear that, I guess, I don't know if it's possible to ever reach the goal where you have 100% satisfied every stormwater. And so as a borough, I feel like there has been an effort to make sure that we're in compliance with our permit, that we're using this calculator to get the work that is minimally required in addition to other projects. So there has been some effort to really, you know, ensure safety and protection.
Okay, compliance has the main thing.
What happens if you meet these minimum requirements for compliance and yet a resident's property has incurred thousands of dollars worth of damage over the years? How does that fit into the long-range plan and what's happening? I mean, I see that this is a huge problem, way bigger than one resident. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm here only because I'm truly interested in what's happening because I have had thousands of dollars worth of damage done to my property personally.
Yeah.
And it started in 2021 and it's ongoing and it's just getting worse. And I can't even think about making the necessary repairs to my property until the issue has been resolved. And that is the storm sewer is totally deteriorated on the whole length of our property. And I'm now concerned, I'm watching this, looking at all of these deteriorated pipes, and that's the one on Nottingham, on my yard, in my yard, right? And now I'm worried about how much toxicity might be coming through these storm drains and is on my property, and I have no idea all these years. And you might want to say, well, Mrs. Polly, why'd you wait so long? Well, in 2021, when Ralph came out and the engineer came out, they were totally aware of this. And I just thought the borough would act in good faith and have this issue taken care of. And I've been watching right along in our newsletters, and I've been encouraged. In 2022, that closed circuit TV people came out and they took pictures, and then I saw $40,000 were budgeted for sinkholes, of which my husband fell into one in my yard. And we didn't make a fuss because Ralph was so nice. He came out and the engineer came out and they said, listen, the following year, I promise we're gonna budget for this. The borough's working on this. So at our expense, we purchased 60 bags of gravel and filled up these holes. And the following season, which was 2022, 2023 came by. And again, in the winter newsletter, it said that we're going to have money budgeted for the storm sewer. So I thought, well, okay, let me let it go again this year. So we bought 40 more bags of gravel. I didn't want to be the neighbor that complains because I know that your job isn't easy and you have 3,000 other residents to deal with. So I was trying to be patient. And then in the summer of 2023, I read that the storm sewer repairs were allotted $167,000. And I thought, oh, well, I'm really encouraged. Maybe they're going to get to us this year, right? So then June of that year, I read about the impacts of the health, safety, and welfare regarding this. And then in the winter of 2024, there was more information in our newsletter regarding it. And then all of a sudden we had all this rain this spring. And honestly, my property is being destroyed. I have a 20 by 40 foot swimming pool in the yard. It's now lopsided because of the erosion that was caused by the water that's seeping onto our property. I mean, I have to replace the concrete deck all the way around. How can I do that if the storm sewer is not repaired? I mean, I'm not trying to be unreasonable. I'm just inquiring. I mean, I don't know if the borough has insurance for this type of thing or any kind of plan that helps remediate a problem sooner rather than later. But I'm distraught. I mean, I'm totally frustrated. And I'm not trying to be rude. I'm really not. I'm trying to be patient. But I don't know what to do with our property. If I have think about this. I live on the hill on Nottingham. If 40,000 gallons of water drains from my pool and goes down the hill, how many properties do you think it's going to affect? I mean, I am really concerned. I've had specialty pools come out and give me estimates. I mean, I'm really frustrated. I really am. And like I said, I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm just trying to get some kind of resolution and figure out how you can deal with this problem sooner rather than later. And I see that it's a long-term project, but I don't think my property's gonna last that long.
If I could add, first of all, thank you for sharing your experience and your story. It's always good to hear somebody's personal experience when you're talking about these matters. But in you referencing the newsletter, it appears, or not appears, it's showing that the borough is taking an effort to address stormwater issues.
Sure.
And so what I would say, the issue is not so much that we're turning a blind eye, it may be prioritizing what needs to be addressed in a way that is efficient, maybe more efficient. Not saying that we haven't done it efficiently, but maybe we need to, prioritize Nottingham Drive for the next project, being that it's such a pressing issue versus, another issue, and then prioritize that issue at a later point. So thank you for that. I didn't want to take you guys off of your presentation, but thank you for the insight.
I get it, and I understand, and I appreciate that. I'm just saying that, I just feel that in 4 years, something should have been prioritized, really.
Yeah, in 4 years, there was work that was done. It wasn't Nottingham Drive, unfortunately.
Right, right, and I think I've been patient.
You did Marbury Road. We say, no, you didn't. Marbury Road was done, right? And what else was completed in 4-year time frame? Stormwater.
Oh, there was a significant number of projects, again, for the most part, most of them were in smaller chunks, again,
Sure.
what could be done, what we made sure to maintain compliance. But yeah, to your point, that project was, we have a design, there was a plan in place, and that's been part of the discussion every year in terms of budgeting for that upcoming year. Has been applied for numerous grants over time, even too, in order to try to find funding for it. So I know it's been at the front of mind of the municipality and trying to find the funding in order to make that happen.
That is our special project list. That is number one. By the way, your property is number one. I just got the budget thing. This is number one of things we have to replace. Like, we
So I
have
may
to do.
say, I think, then correct me if I'm hearing you correctly. You're asking, where am I on this priority list? Because we do have a
Yes.
list
Yeah, you're
of priorities and things that must be done. But I also hear that you're saying, am I that much on the priority list that my land or my property can wait until your priority gets to where my property is no longer? So where am I? Is that what you're saying? Where am I? So is that something then that we could, as council, be able to specifically speak with her?
The finance committee.
And so that we can see where we are budget, because we're going into budget for 2026, and we're talking about the stormwater fee. It's a talk, it has to come up to vote. And as well as Michelle is saying, we're looking at other funding, that we could, so perhaps we could, and I'm gonna say this, and correct my staff, stand to be corrected, that we could speak with you, at another time, and maybe have her come in to see exactly, well, where you are on the list, how soon can we, and what can you absorb in your waiting? Is that basically the correct way to say that?
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question. With all this CCTV and, data gathering, do you have a grading system?
Yes, everything's based on it's called the NAPCO rating system. That's the standardized system that's used for sanitary sewers as well as storm sewers. For storm sewers, again, the mandates and the requirements do not actually even require televising of all the systems. The borough, though, just being proactive, has televised about half the stormwater system within the municipality. Again, it being unfunded, but with that, there are defects that are addressed and identified within that, and I put a 1 to 5 rating system on those defects.
And so
Level
could
5.
perhaps the worst rating,
these people to a higher position of remediation?
Oh, they're at that highest point, it's just at this point, it was, year over year, it was unable to be, addressed within the budget as well as the other needs within the municipality.
The years, we have had a significant number of,
Emergency, that was.
So for example, when the waste management truck fell through the street because there was a pipe like this, right, 2 years ago, that used the whole budget that as part of a planned project where we'd say, hey, we really need to get to Nottingham, in the backyards and everything else, the truck through the street becomes a higher and emergency priority.
I
And
understand what
that's
you're saying, but I also understand what our resident is saying, in that when things like that happen, please notify me and let me know I've moved. In other words, you were here on the list, but now you've dumped down here on the list because we had an emergency, something that came up that was not budgeted. And that's part of what we are looking at with the stormwater fee, making sure that we have the money available so that when we can deal with those emergencies, so that it's not taken away from what has been budgeted.
I apologize for
No,
interrupting your
you're-
program.
Thank you, it's nice to know, we've been talking about you in the infrastructure committee, and I'm glad to meet you.
Yeah, I'm glad to meet you.
I haven't seen your finally.
Time, so.
Finally, it's very nice to meet you. We have a in our regard as well, so I understand when you're talking about the ground moving and the dirt moving, I pray mines don't move. That's 35,000 gallons of water going down the street, and water's not cheap either.
Yeah.
So, and whatever property that's gonna hit on its way down is gonna be devastating. So we as council, we are very concerned, and we do talk about you in infrastructure.
Well, thanks. My water bill was $1,079 this month
What?
because
Well.
the erosion
what
caused
it
the
is.
pipes, they were sitting on the ground, okay? And the dirt eroded underneath the return lines and the return lines cracked. And so when am I saying that correctly?
The dirt sunk, which the deck went down about 3 inches, and the water lines are underneath it. And they must have developed a leak.
So your pool,
Right,
yours
it
is
shifted,
under.
my whole pool shifted sideways. About 2.5 inches maybe. And I'm just really concerned, but whenever I called the pool company, they thought it was evaporation.
Right,
And when I
right.
got the,
That was going
when I
somewhere
got,
else,
when I
yeah.
got
I
the
know.
water bill, I said something else is wrong. We hired a diver to go in and double check, and that's how we know what the
The
problem
plumbing
was.
is still where it was supposed to be.
And well, there's a leak in the return lines, which I was losing an inch and a half of water a day.
But we thought it was just the sun.
So you know.
Yeah.
what's up there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Multiple gallons.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
I don't know what let me figure out. Is somebody testing, along with this corrosion, if there's any mine leakage coming into play into, exacerbating the corrosion?
As part of the MS4 program, the monitoring of the water that's leaving the system, we do check for various chemicals and colors and things like that. That all gets reported if it's found. You don't see it all the time, obviously, right, depending on where you are. But that is part of the program as far as MS4 goes. And we can submit pictures and all those types of things to DEP, so when they're found, they're productive.
I don't know if this is relevant, but I called the mine subsidence people. I've had mine subsidence insurance since we moved in 1998. I thought, well, maybe it's not the storm sewer. Maybe it is mine subsidence. They just came last week. And they went down over the hill, and the guy was at our place at least 2 hours. I haven't received the actual report yet, but he tried to assure us that it was not related to mine subsidence.
And in regard to that, there have been a number of issues that at times you can easily identify that there is because of the deposits or whatever it may be. So there has been work and plenty of meetings with the Bureau of Abandoned Mines, and actually they were out here this year and repaired a couple of pipes that were explicitly at their own fault.
We live in Churchill. We've been in Churchill 45 years, 44 years in Blackridge. We know the mine science people very well.
Oh, yeah, we're friends.
sinkhole. And, yeah, we know the spiel and it is, still percolating. Is there, theory of it is if we touch it, it will make it worse. So just let it percolate here on it.
But in certain cases where that is identified, that was the contributing factor that has been able to be taken care of by those means. In these cases, these are primarily teaching infrastructure that is failing. Again, trying to put everything in its proper bucket and identify the means to remediate them. I think that's a good segue to this right here too, as we're looking at the capital projects, specifically some of those that have come up over the years.
Yeah, so just additional examples, right? Everybody in the room understands what we're talking about as far as going through the different. But sinkholes or other evidence of collapsing sites, that kind of stuff. So these are the things that obviously need to be corrected and do cost money. So something else to consider as far as storm sewer repairs go is coordination with road programs. The Stormwater Utility Fund does look at curbs on roads as conveyances for stormwater. So the fund itself can also be utilized for road programs. Obviously, the curbs help, like I mentioned, but there's a piece of understanding the condition of storm sewers underneath the road, right? So if you're gonna dig up a road, I don't want to make sure that the condition of the pipe is burnt, so you don't repair a road and then find out you have an emergency that you didn't do anything to, and then dig up the road again. So the whole piece of the fund. Back from storm sewers, that kind of stuff underneath the road, so it becomes more of a pretty comprehensive budgeting tool for what is out in the part. And then I mentioned food production plans for keeping the sediment out of the stream. So Farley did a project down here at Park back in 2024. And we have some before and after pictures here to give you an idea what that looks like. But on the left side, you can see areas of the stream where the bank is eroded, right? There's all that sediment getting into the streams, exposing roots of trees. That obviously means that tree is in danger of falling. Trees and vegetation are great for maintaining treatment, right? So if you're losing that much, it might become a problem. So some of the things we do, and I mentioned the BMPs on the right side, you can see they sort of cut back the stream bank. A little bit tough to see, but at the bottom of that mesh, there's a log that's fastened into the ground there that helps maintain the bank there. And then further up the stream, you see where the water's kind of smooth and then it gets rough coming toward us there. There's actually some logs that are shaped like a V more or less, with an opening at the bottom that are there to channel the water. These are all types of things talked about with to help mitigate this.
This project that was required to complete CRP did come over significantly what was budgeted. It was over $90,000 for the CRP. So it kind of puts me to these requirements that we are required to do are not the thing.
Next page. So, as a part of the stormwater fund, what I'd like to do is look at what's coming up over the next few years and have an idea of what the budgets are for So, using this, it basically outlines just about everything from a stormwater standpoint that the borough spends money on. Your operations there, your food production plans, and capital improvements, stormwater management and replacements, water quality things associated with MS4, and then the administration of the utility fund itself. But what we come up with is for the next 5 years, the borough's looking at approximately $500,000 in stormwater expenses, like to maintain our stormwater program year over year. So it gives us an idea of the amount of money the borough is spending on the couple generations.
This Chloe on there, you can see that your project listed for one of the top next year. We were, it is pulled on the list of $165,000. That's something that has been going up for the past few years as well. With our, unfortunately, outdated numbers. It's a little bit more than that.
Yeah, that was the number that was quoted, I think, in 2022, and I'm sure the price has gone up since. And I get it. I just hope that I don't have any further damage. I mean, I know that this takes time. I'm looking at these numbers. I mean, I can see what you're up against, but I just don't know how long my property is gonna withstand this. I mean, I'm really, I don't know even what to say when I look at this, because I see that we are all in this together, and we all have to do something, but I don't know what the solution is. I just know that my property is really being damaged majorly.
So to help mitigate the amount of money that is required for the stormwater program, there's a couple funding options. Right, I have three of them in front of us here. One is, as Michelle mentioned, the rate taxes. What that does is puts the full burden on the taxpayer and the exempt properties we talked about. Don't really have to, it doesn't impact them at all. But they are traditionally the largest property owners that have the largest hard surface on their property to generate. Could do nothing, right? Say, no, we're not gonna comply with any permits or anything. They still have to maintain the infrastructure, right? And for the mandates, they're gonna get paid with fines and penalties. That they're not fun to deal with, get the rebate prices. But the bottom line is still need to maintain the infrastructure. So the final one we're gonna talk about in a little more detail is the stormwater utility fund. It does create a tool that requires the properties to participate. So it's more of a fair and balanced way to generate stormwater funding, fair fee distribution, and provides funding set aside specifically for the stormwater program.
My question is, how does our property fit in?
They've been assessed as far as the impervious surface on their property. They're clearly one of the largest ones in the area.
And the biggest contributor to the water.
Right. Yeah.
So I think that, just to segue into that, I mean, that's one of the issues, right? That because that's a large property with a lot of impervious surface, but their, the value, because of the shape it's in, is pretty low. If we just raise taxes, that really doesn't generate very much revenue, even though they produce a lot of that stormwater, right? Versus if we do a fee based on how much impervious surface is, all the pavement, all the side, everything that water can't get through to absorb in the ground, right? And we say, hey, you've got giant parking lots and other stuff that's creating this stormwater. So it helps put the fees with the users, right? Just like the water bill, you use more water, you pay more towards maintaining the system. And that's one of the problems right now is just by raising taxes, that's a good example. The school district doesn't pay, because they're tax exempt, they don't pay anything towards stormwater, even though they have a lot of parking lots and other stuff, and they're creating that. So, without the stormwater authority, or if we, Churchill chooses not to move in that direction, then really the only option is to raise taxes, and that means it falls on residents only. So that is an option, but, I think this is part of the conversation of why, this could make sense.
A follow-up question on a different road. I see Marbury up there. I'm assuming that's North Marbury, the one that's down the ravine. Not the one, because there's, the one that's up high and there's one low.
Yeah.
Now that goes actually into Forest Hills, and I know that there is problems with sinkholes on the Forest Hill side. Because if you go straight through Marbury, you get over to Cherry Valley. So on the other side, that's a paper street. And I know there's a very large sewer over there that's actually collapsed. Stormwater. Are we talking to Forest Hills about that? Because it's kind of like a two-borough issue.
Not necessarily anything on the Forest Hill side, all the identification, because it's the same infrastructure, most likely all that infrastructure was installed at the same time. That's where we had the garbage truck go through the road previously, was on that portion of Marbury. So portions of that pipe have been incrementally replaced over time, again, trying to do as much as can be done within that budget. There is a larger piece of sewer that is anticipated to be lined that's just downstream before you get into Forest Hill. At this point, these funds and Churchill Borough funds would not necessarily pay for improvements outside of Churchill Borough. It is intended for things within Churchill Borough. That would be a Forest Hills issue within Forest Hills, but
Is there talks with Forest Hills?
there hasn't been any, and at this point, Forest Hills hasn't approached Churchill Borough that I'm aware of in terms of any sinkholes or any issues, any coordination with.
What does mean if we're aware that we're going to say repair Marbury next year, that we couldn't reach out to them and be like, hey, is there a possibility that if we're doing this, we could coordinate around the same time? I think that's always not.
Yeah, anyway, to find efficiencies, if you can find efficiencies within a project where you had one contractor potentially doing both, but again, funds would be allocated towards the Churchill infrastructure.
Kind of like a follow-up to your question. What her question kind of hits at is the interconnectedness of the municipalities. Churchill is not isolated, Forest Hills is not isolated. We're seeing that our stormwater system feeds into or is connected in some way to their stormwater system. In your slide on slide 4, you had talked about that there are 400 inlets. We manage 12 miles of the stormwater infrastructure. However, some of the inflow that I believe from these 400 inlets may be coming from other municipalities into our borough. So how are we coordinating to ensure that the damage that's being done, we're not in the middle of the stream? You know, it's coming from upstream down through our borough. Now we're being hit with $600,000 projects every year. How is there a collective effort to address the stormwater issues? We talked about the inlets, where does the water actually go out?
And that is part of the system and understanding your system. For Churchill is primarily at the top. Churchill, we're at a higher elevation. Most everything flows out of the municipality. But similarly, we don't necessarily have downstream municipalities coming back and saying, you're causing these undue problems, because water's naturally gonna go downhill. That is part of it. Now, whether or not you are maintaining it properly within your system, so you're not creating undue harm onto anybody else, but that's part of televising the system and having a full understanding of the system, so that maybe you would identify the water line break potentially that may be causing a problem or exacerbating an issue, or is it that somebody is not properly maintaining it, or if it were to come into the municipality? That's all things that we try to better understand by televising the system, by mapping the system. In this case, the 400 inlets that we're talking about, 400 inlets that's coming from Churchill Borough and properties within Churchill Borough, and that's what's kind of identified within identifying the speed to maintain that system.
Sure, so all the stormwater pipes you're saying, because we're at a higher elevation, start here. So there's nothing else on the other end. So we look at a pipe, the starting point, let's say it's here. There's nothing on the other side of that.
No, the majority of there may be one or two cases where it is, slightly crossing over, but for the most part, Churchill is at the highest elevation flowing into Wilkins or Wilkinsburg or Penn Hills or one of the neighboring municipalities.
Okay. And it goes all the way
to Creek. And so that's there are outfalls within the municipality. I don't know if you know what the town of outfalls is, but that's a requirement of them for to test each one of those outfalls. That is a requirement on an annual basis that you're testing for 10%. I think there's 40 or 50 outfalls. Yeah, so 40 or 50 points in which it outfalls. Typically that's outfalling right at a stream. Sometimes it's outfalling and then it's a small channel before it makes its way into a larger stream. But we have identified all those outfalls, and all those outfalls do have to be tested on a regular basis.
Okay, so picking back up on the funding options, talking about the stormwater utility, the fee itself is basically just saying that there's a fee associated with the care and custody of stormwater, right? The collection, the management, the control of stormwater being generated. The property owners pay for impervious area that creates stormwater runoff on the property. and then the municipality providing the service to maintain the infrastructure and things like that, that's stormwater. So the key items that we mentioned, the tax exempt properties do participate. Public roads are usually exempt from the fee. It just gets pretty difficult to start thinking about who owns what, who's driving on what. You gotta levy a fee on that, so they're usually exempt from these types of things. But many of these stormwater fees have been implemented in the county, in the state, all over the place. This isn't like a new idea. It's just starting here at Churchill. There's many of these. So this graph here, it just gives a little bit of an illustration of a stormwater management program with and without a fee. The red line sort of goes up and down. That kind of shows the funds needed to maintain your stormwater. And what that's sort of saying is, like any kind of stormwater budget, there are years where you're spending more, you're spending less, and that's sort of illustrating what that looks like there with the dashed line, basically giving you your trajectory of how much you can really take care of a year, right? So on those ups, those peaks, there might be loans or bonds and things like that taken out that then have to be paid for down the road, right? So it sort of builds and builds and builds, and you never have the money to really take care of some of those peaks there.
Question.
How would you measure how much stormwater usage each resident has?
We're gonna get into that. Good question. We'll show you how we come up with it. And then the user fee just shows, right, you're starting higher, you have more money available to handle those highs and lows. So to answer your question, Miss, how is the fee established? So it's based on impervious surface of a property. We call that an ERU, equivalent residential unit, an acronym for that. And what we do is we look at aerial imagery and we digitize the impervious surface of the property. Okay, so there's two different types of properties that go into these. There's residential and there's non-residential. Okay, so for a residential property, we do a sample of properties throughout the municipality. All right, just to give basically a good sample size of the different types of residential properties. So you're getting some larger ones, you're getting smaller ones, you're just getting a good mix of properties in the municipality. I think we did 250 or so sample properties, something like that, to give us a good guide. And then what we do is we take the median value of all those, right? So as we do this, it's calculating automatically for us the square footage of impervious surface on each property. We take that median value, and that becomes what we call 1 ERU, okay? So in the case of Churchill Borough, 1 ERU came out to be a little over 3,050 square feet. Okay, so that basically means that from a stormwater utility fund perspective, we're just assuming that every property has 3,051 square feet of impervious surface, so every resident is going to be charged the same 1 ERU. So what happens on the non-residential side is now that we know that an ERU is 3,051 square feet, we digitize the impervious area of all the non-residential properties, schools, the churches, all those other things we talked about, and we divide the amount of impervious surface on each of those properties by 3,051 to figure out how many ERUs are on. So for example, if there's a non-residential property that is, we'll call it 30,500 feet. We would divide that by 3,051, and I'm just trying to use some round numbers, but it's basically end up with about 10 ERU in that case, okay? So that gives you the idea of how much impervious surface you have on your property. So then what we do is we take that budget we looked at to figure out, okay, so here's how much we're gonna spend on average every year on stormwater. So let's start backing in numbers to see what we can come up with to get us kind of close to that to help generate funding for stormwater. So if we look at ERUs across the borough, there ends up being about 2,800, which includes residential and non-residential. And if we take those numbers, we come up with a fee of about $115 per year per resident. So you're looking at just under $10 a month.
Per year, per ERU.
Per ERU, right? So a resident would pay about $10 a month for the stormwater. Now, a non-residential place that has 10 ERUs, they would be paying closer to $100 a month, okay? Because they're generating more stormwater. The borough is reviewing options for credits for ratepayers and things like that to help mitigate some of those costs associated with this. So there's some discussion, occurring on what that looks like. But,
Brain barrel? You mean on brain barrel?
So all of these things aren't able to be finalized really, this is just discussion because we have to implement an authority. Then the authority will make the final decisions on what exactly the monthly rate will be, what exactly, credit would look like. So these are, hypothetical situations.
Or the residents say, you don't want to do. They tell you to not do any of this.
But do you mean not implement the stormwater authority or not?
Correct. Any of it.
Well, at the end of the day, council will be voting. They would like to see an authority implemented. Yeah, the residents can express their opinions and say, no, we don't want this stuff. But then the council will vote.
Yes, the council or your elected representatives, so as a community, you do have the ability to advocate and submit your, whether you're in favor or opposed to it, and then ultimately the council will take that and make a decision. And then
Actually, you can do that on October 10th. So there'll be a public, comment period specifically for the possible implementation of the stormwater authority. So before the workshop on that day, residents are invited to come in and talk about, what they feel towards the possible implementation.
So, Michelle, if you could kind of provide some additional information about the stormwater authority leadership. It's independent, how the individuals be selected, oversight from council, whether there is or is not.
And so this, the different entities that you are not named with council. They have to have their own meetings, so they be regularly want to advertise that, and make their own decisions. We're required to have a solicitor, also an engineer. It's the beginning, the way stormwater authorities now might be able to talk to us a bit more, but, the appointments are tiered. So an individual appointed to the stormwater authority is there for a year, and then that phases out, the next person is 2 years, that phases out, until you have a president or, with no, their ordinance.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and just for some perspective, I am substituting tonight as the solicitor for Churchill, but I'm also the solicitor for Baldwin. Baldwin does have a stormwater authority. We implemented it about 4.5 years ago for a lot of the same reasons you guys are discussing here. Too many projects and not enough funding to go around. It's been very successful in Baldwin. Correct that it is a separate entity. Council would approve the incorporation of that entity. You then form the entity, you adopt all of its own rules, policies, regulations. Council would appoint the members to the authority on that rolling basis. That is correct that it would be people appointed for 1 year, then 2 years, then 3 years, so that it's always rolling. And then after that, the authority operates much like council does. It meets for regular meetings that are advertised. There's public comments, there's an engineer report, a solicitor's report. So it really does become its own body with its own budget and its own short-term and long-term goals.
Budget, we will, if this is implemented, that particular budget will be audited, there's some separate, that there's no central fund out of it, so there's something else not related to this. It's very clean and precise.
I think the other comment I would make is that it would be a lot easier to just assess a fee, right? It would be easier if the borough could just say, we're gonna do this fee. Because of the way the state code is written, boroughs aren't allowed to assess fees, so that's why it's necessary, right? It's part of to be able to say, hey, we're gonna do this fee to collect this, based on usage and ERUs and everything else, we have to form an authority.
that is true currently, but there is legislation in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives 990, 991 to change that legislation. because they realize the initial administrative costs that it requires for an authority, independence of, some authorities. It would be easier for municipalities to assess a stormwater fee if they would like, if the legislation was changed. So they're trying to open it up to where municipalities outside of the Class A townships can implement a stormwater fee. And so in the last borough council meeting, I encouraged members to advocate and lobby for that legislation to move forward and be passed, because it's something that is a pressing issue for our residents. Additionally, college.
Hypothetically, if you set up this organization, right? And you set up this fee, how do you enforce it? I mean, does it become a law then? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is that what would happen is council would approve, creating the stormwater authority. Stormwater authority would also approve who would be serving on the initial inaugural board. The stormwater authority leadership or board appointees would determine what the fee is. They would also determine, I guess, the order of the projects that are executed using the money from the fee, and they would be independent of council. We would be able to say, well, no, you should do X, Y, Z. They're their own entity. The only influence, from my understanding, that council would have is who we choose to be on the board. But once they're on the board, there's no oversight from us to manage the work. They would manage the work.
It is a possibility that council members can be on. Well, so that is a possibility as well.
My question, I think, follows up on this person's question here is, how would you enforce the residents to partake? I mean, do you fine them?
Yeah, the authority will, establish who they want to be as the billing agent. Then there will be a bill that's sent out. If it goes on for extensive period of time, the authority can decide what they decide to do, but it's possibly the field meeting on the property or, interest occurred on the bill.
Like another tax?
Again, so my
We're not calling
question,
it tax.
my question to that is, slide 17, right here. The estimated annual revenue generation is approximately $325,000. Just using your rough numbers that you calculated here. Understanding that the numbers could increase, decrease, and we're thinking this is the annual, at least people going to. But if you go back to slide 11, the stormwater budget, in the first year, the cost for the total cost with the administrative fees and also the capital improvement projects was $632,000. So where's that additional money coming from? I say all that to say, I mean, I guess you guys can see, I'm in support of getting the work done. Let me make that very clear. I'm not in support of the stormwater authority. Because I feel like although, you know, it's wonderful to say that we're making everybody pay. I hear that and I feel like what you're saying is now I'm charging everyone, but the people who are already paying property taxes, you're paying twice. I'm paying the property taxes and now I'm also paying this stormwater fee. So I think it's important to figure out a way to have everybody contribute. But I don't know how we do that. So that's where, you know, we need to put the mind energy towards. But again, it still feels like even with this fee that you're suggesting, there's going to be a shortfall. So we're estimating it's going to be $10 a month. But just based on this average population, it's not enough to hit year one of the work that needs.
At least it gives us a little bit more advantage than we already have right now. So without implementing this stormwater authority, we are talking more about the general fund.
Yes.
However, the stormwater authority is freeing up $300,000.
But it sounds like it's not really freeing up $300,000 because you still have to supplement from your general fund some additional money to hit that year one. if you're only generating $325,000 from your fee, you're still gonna need an additional $300,000 to pay for year one's project. Can we also talk about the alternative option that was potentially not really vetted so much, but the municipal bond and how that would be an also, an alternative option in addition to the stormwater fees?
And the borough itself understands that there's a plethora of outstanding projects we have, just not with stormwater. There's sanitary projects, number of infrastructure and paving as well, so, that has been discussed, but no final decision has been made on that.
No, and I wasn't trying to make you say that there was. All right.
And even with that, there would need to be funding in order to pay back that bond. And that would be a way of taking out the bond and be able to address that year one cost. And then it's being paid back over time. Stormwater utility fee would be something that would be able to help pay back that bond over time.
Sure.
I mean, we have been actively applying for grants as well. We applied for PA Small Water, we applied for LSA, we applied for DCF. But unfortunately, the time of uncertainty, so if we hear about any of those, well, not this year, but next year we'll be lucky. So we can't really bank on getting grants as well during this time.
I want to bring up the impervious surface, it's just doing it on your square footage. If you took a Google map of my street, I would look like I'm the worst offender, but actually I'm the best because I have a very long driveway. However, I took a lot of mitigation factors on there. I put a zipper drain at the bottom. I have it drained into a dry well. I've got a terrace with swales and plants to catch all the extra water. I'm also on the downside of the road that I'm on. My driveway goes down, so all my water stays on my property. The people across the street from me are above it, so all of their stuff goes onto the street and into the stormwater. So if you just looked at it by pure square footage, I look like I'm a bad offender, where I think actually my property is the best out of all of them combined, because I'm keeping it on my property and I'm keeping it away from the stormwater. So how is that going to be looked at with or without a water authority? I mean, who determines that?
I think that is how we're going to do the manual. And if you come before the authority and you state that you're doing X, Y, and Z with water mitigation, then we could have an official engineer come out, look at the area and say, you're right, you do have this. And then that's where credit would apply for you.
And if there wasn't a water authority, then, I mean, who or what do I go to?
So right now, there's nothing right now.
Yeah, I know that, but I mean, if we don't vote, or if it's not voted to go in, but it sounds like it's going in. But for the water authority, it's like, then how does that get determined? I mean, how?
Well, right now there's no fee, there is no stormwater fee to
Okay.
fix the stormwater issues, right? If we don't continue to kick some of these projects that need to be done down the road
I understand
and
that.
delay them, we can, the only choice we have is to raise the general revenue taxes, raise the millage. And again, that falls only on residents.
So what I'm also hearing, I love what I hear. So what I'm also hearing from Councilwoman Brooke is that a stormwater authority is not necessarily doable or not necessarily mandated in order to assess a stormwater fee.
What I'm saying
Can you
is,
hear, you hear me now?
state law currently
Okay.
says, for anyone outside of a, Class A township, which we fall out of the borough,
Right,
in order to assess a stormwater fee, you have to create a stormwater authority.
correct.
There is legislation though to edit that, edit the current state law to open it up to where communities outside of Class A townships, municipalities, boroughs can then implement a stormwater fee
Without an authority. So let's look at the timeline to do that legislating, but lobbying to do that. How long would that?
sorry, that bill's currently at the state,
That the state,
the state rep.
Yes.
It is going to take a while for it to get to Senate. Senate will have to approve, vote on it, and then the governor will have to sign into law.
give me
So
a
this
time,
wouldn't
throw me a
be-
time, throw me a time frame.
I wouldn't say, it's not something that's gonna happen in,
Thank you.
by December. You know, it would take, yes, probably a year's time. However, I feel like as a community who is dealing with these issues, we should be contacting our state rep. We should be contacting Senator Costa, who's always very, resourceful and willing to assist us, to ensure that we are making it clear we want this to happen. So we can explore the stormwater fee without the administrative cost of the authority, without losing oversight of how the fee is assessed, what projects are done, ensuring that there is a place for residents to be able to present, to say, I've done X, Y, Z on my property. So there's some accountability. When you're an elected official, you're accountable who you voted out. Your appointee, yes, you can, you know, somebody else can be appointed, but I still feel like there's a level of accountability when it's your council member versus a separate entity.
Actually can clarify if I'm wrong. So say council does vote to pass the authority, it is implemented, and thankfully those bills pass, we could get rid of the authority at that time and then implement just the fee at the borough level.
So how much money would we have spent on the initial coordinating of the authority? Because there's some administrative costs in there.
Yeah, solicitor and, engineering department.
They don't take away from us getting the project.
They are, I mean, I will say they're one-time costs. So, I mean,
So the one-time cost, when you say that, I hear what you're saying with the administrative and the one-time cost. So we're at that point now where we're sort of just doing the engineering part on that. So it still has to, we're still gonna have to do, we're still gonna have to pay something upfront to begin the project, correct? So we've already done
To
that.
incorporate a fee,
Right.
there is still that upfront work, so there's,
You still
that's
have,
a separate piece between that.
Whether we do a store on authority or not,
fee and
correct?
the-
there's still the upfront money, correct?
Yeah, one other point too, just because I guess I've been in municipal engineer since 2013-ish. And over time, we've run into this, I think, Devin can remember, I think back in 2018, after the large storm events that we had then, that there was discussion of implementing the stormwater fee then, and at that point, it was, well, let's hold on, because there was legislature in play then to potentially be passed. So 2018, there was legislature to pass on behalf of allowing boroughs to implement the stormwater fee, which never ended up getting passed, and that was why it was on hold actually for a number of years in terms of borough discussion. That and other entities across the state of Pennsylvania that had implemented fees and other legislature that was out there. So that's just one thing that had been considered along the way. Was it would be great to not have to go through that process, but we have seen that from another number of other entities. A number of other municipalities have kind of, you know, grown impatient as we have residents that are looking for work to be done and their projects to be completed, and that's the only path moving forward right now is to implement the utility in order to.
Well, that's unfortunate. I mean, I know that the state, I don't believe, pays any stormwater fees, and they have a significant footprint. But they're making, I had this conversation about stormwater fees, which is interesting. But I will ask the solicitor in the back, what would be the process to make this a referendum? Because we are a community of over 3,000 residents. You see, we have a smaller group here. Council is a 7-member body. How do we really pull the community to ensure that when we're talking about this fee and creating an authority, that we really cast the net wide to ensure that residents are involved? So how will we create a referendum for this?
yeah, I would have to look into the specifics. I mean, it certainly would not be a quick process. You have to submit referendums months ahead of time with the county in order to get them on the ballot. So it wouldn't be something, for example, that you see in November. We would be talking like many, many months out to do a referendum. We'd have to advertise the exact language, we'd have to discuss it. So, I mean, certainly,
That could be something we do
yeah,
with a primary.
I would want to look at the specifics, but I mean, there would be a long runway on that.
And that's, me asking that question is not in any way trying to delay work being done on your property or negate that you are a priority, so please understand that.
Thank you.
Or anybody's property, so don't let anybody else.
Okay, so again, this is proposed, right? This is not set in stone. There's a lot of things that have to happen before any of this gets approved. But, we've, in 2025 so far, we had a meeting with the non-residential ratepayers. The public notice for the authority, I believe that was done in ordinance public hearing toward the end of the year, and then 2026. Good things move forward. The idea would be the initial bill to be sent in the first quarter, better application submission from the second quarter, so on and so forth through the first year. Again, this is all of this proposed. So, the summary of what we talked about here. The cost of stormwater is increasing based on the unfunded mandates, and it's obviously the projects we talked about that need to be taken care of. Operation and maintenance of the infrastructure, it's not getting any younger, and there's storm water pollution and flooding. You know, you can see with the rain events that occur nowadays, flooding is more common than it's been in the past. So, dedicated fair funding strategy can help value funding agency have to maintain their storm sewer infrastructure. And, as I mentioned before, these are fairly common throughout the state of Canada.
On the, topic of flooding, correct me if I'm wrong, but nowhere within our borough, we have a designation for, flood insurance related to floodplain. That's correct?
Yeah, I don't think so, just based on the location. Yeah, or the location of the stream, but I doubt that there would be any.
Mine for five, yes.
Mine for five,
There is other mitigation available to a homeowner than to have a store backup rider on your insurance. And we don't have the ability to have, a federal flood, declaration. So we're kind of.
Well, and that, again, that kind of goes in hand with, that's why it's looking for funding in order to make sure that those issues can be removed.
And whether it's funded through, an authority or it's funded through regular millage, if we start to have failures, who funds the, fees and fines? We do, correct?
There are things that citizens can do. I'm not saying I'm in favor or not in favor. But, our little cul-de-sac is below the parkway, and so Greensburg Pike, but it's a public road. So it's not so like I'm still screwed because that's not counted in with anything. But I cut grass, but I try to blow it so that it's away from the grate. There's stuff that when the rain comes, so I walk around on our thing and I clear it out for the next time. I have a rain barrel for years, my goodness, it's just so easy. So, but it's like this credit thing, I took it upon myself to do these things to slow down the erosion coming from Greensburg Pike. But yet I still haven't paid this fee. I would like somebody to say, you have this, you've done this, all right, you don't have a fee.
I don't know. Myself, I just always responsibility, they literally can establish whatever regulations that they would see fit. I think if, does decide to implement the majority, what you have pre-existing on your property, another property, you say. Like what they.
It's the same like with our garbage. I barely have garbage. I pay the same amount as everybody else, because I had compost everything. A lot of stuff, but when I call them, like, you have to speak to the borough, the borough decides the thing. Joe Blow citizen, if you just not cut our knees off from underneath us, we'd be a lot happier. It's my job as a citizen to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't want politics and the government cutting my knees off from under me because I'm taking the initiative to be proactive.
It be proactive. Unfortunately, not every individual. The situation does that, but I think, in those situations where with the farms, where we're feeding, you know, the garden is based on,
The snowplow comes in the winter time or the conveyances, that's like the black bumps, right, to direct the water. But the snowplow comes along and it tore up a lot of ours down in our cul-de-sac. And as I looked around, driving around the borough, it's got some other. But again, you're using a snowplow, there's snow, there's ice, you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. So something's gonna get ripped up. Okay, so I try to pile mine back up. I'm not gonna redo the whole conveyance, but I try to pile it back up so the rain will still flow into the drain.
our public works. We try to come around with most of those to make them prepared, when needed, but if you ever notice,
Well, they were all working. But the one that you did in front of my driveway,
Yeah.
I mean, that sunk and it broke, and within a week, I mean, I called and let the borough know, and I sent pictures, and we got fixed. Cause it was the thing broke, and now that doesn't help your situation, I realize. But if I don't advocate for myself, for my own property, nobody else will. Understand?
And just to add a little bit to your comment about to having the rain barrel allowed for. Council did talk about that in the infrastructure. It's actually been talked about for a couple of years, like not new. Some of them will be hearing for the first time. We've talked about it extensively. The thing with the rain barrel and bioswales, someone would have to go around and check and make sure. If you say I have a rain barrel, how do we know that for sure? Someone would have to go around and check all those things. That's one thing. I'm just throwing that out there. Someone had contacted us, says, well, I take my garbage to work and get rid of it, so I don't wanna pay the garbage. We're all in the same boat. And I understand, I'm the same as you, I throw very little garbage out. It all goes into my compost.
And the borough did sponsor, the Pennsylvania Resources. They had a regular workshop. I came down another one.
Yes.
No. I'm sorry. Compost. So now I got another compost. But my original rain barrel years ago was from a borough sponsored rain barrel presentation.
We wanted to get.
And I got the connected pieces and I got a coupon to go buy the 55-gallon barrel.
It's free water.
It's free water.
But someone told me, yeah, now you wanna have a mosquito farm in my backyard. I mean, this is stuff, they throw back.
I'm sorry, a mosquito farm?
Mosquito farm, well, you got city water. Mosquitoes breed in city water.
You mean the water inside the rain barrel?
This is what someone told me.
But again, you know, as far as individuals doing the right thing, that's something that hopefully is a credit to be established for those that are already doing the right thing. One other point to kind of put across is a lot of the development within Churchill, you don't see a lot of new development. A lot of it was established before kind of the Act 167, Stormwater Act was in place. That's where Brian mentioned earlier, a lot of the new development, you're seeing the larger ponds and helping to maintain that. So every little thing individuals do is great, but a lot of this development, the roads, the streets that were kind of initially put there by the developer didn't have the proper water management associated with it. So that again is part of this. Even if everybody did their own thing, it's still water to make its way into. But that is something where just with the aging infrastructure, the fact that there is a limited amount of water management in place, stormwater fee would be able to go to still remediate some of those issues that continue to pop up.
Any other questions? Thoughts, comments? I feel like me like, yeah.
You brought something with her, sitting here for, talking about this. Thank you for answering my questions. Thank you for the story. Thank you for everybody who's added to the conversation.
And you can find my contact, I can have my cards out if you want to reach out and have questions, council members' emails are online. Feel free to reach out if you have any specific questions. We'll be providing the video online as well afterwards in the handouts too. Also, October 6th is the public hearing for this, the public comment period. You're more than welcome to come during that time and express how you feel in regards to the situation.
So I also have a comment and answer needed if possible. As we move voting on any of the stormwater authorities or fee or anything back any further, that would give opportunity for, as Brooke was saying, not for legislation, but to move forward and push things back, that we can reach out to more residents and get them more overall participation, not survey, overall, I didn't mean to say it so crudely, but, more overall input from residents because, we thank God for you all that came out. This is great. And for October as well, but not to have somebody come October 6th to be against something that we could get more feedback and is it possible to move the date back as opposed to voting October 6th and then moving forward. Someone said, I don't know who it was, it sounds like it's already done. I don't like hearing things like that, but when
For
we don't have a
successful
situation.
implementation of the authority to be the beginning of January 2026, we would have to do it with that timeline, we already would have it. It is the will of council if they want to, not survey people, but
Extend the date.
extend it, that's a possibility, but it would not start beginning January 21.
Could you send out another email that you could, like the initial one that brought me here, say, watch it, if you've watched it, just send a comment of how you feel about it.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Or can you print some flyers and I will go do what you do.
Yeah.
That too.
Deb had
Yeah, I just had one, just to reiterate, up until now, we have 2 churches and 2 schools who pay 0 taxes. So we rely on our residents. So this would give us the opportunity to get money from them that we normally don't get. So that is an advantage of it, wouldn't you say?
Correct.
And do we have any idea, roundabout number, what that would be if we're estimating it's $10 a
a
month
resident.
for residents? Would you have any idea what, Woodland Hills High School and our 2 churches?
So yeah, in all of the non-residential, we're definitely more than 100.
Oh, of course, I mean, way more. I'm just curious,
Some of them range from $40,000 a year.
okay?
Versus 100 per resident.
Some of them were as low as like
That's not bad.
1,500. So,
Yes.
I guess, yours, not on everybody's, but, all of the non-residential entities was, about, 1,250 ERUs. No, that's the number of
Okay.
ERUs, so whatever that fee is, they're paying 1,250 of that. Residential is about 1,000. So non-residential was almost half of the entire municipality, the
Right.
way of looking. So this fee would be funded almost half by non-residential, half by, and there's obviously the nuances of the credit fees and, you know, credits and how that'll play in, but again, that's a way to look at it of, otherwise we're talking about just residential
Right.
and then a couple of properties, but it's, I think Matt had mentioned earlier, like the Westinghouse property may not be paying their fair share because the improvements are not improvement, it's not an improved property at this point. So they're paying a lower tax rate than what that large property would typically entail.
The question in the back, sorry.
Yeah, question on the ERU for the residential, so 3,051 square feet. So if you're smaller than that, is your fee gonna be less per month? And if it's more than that, or each resident's gonna be
The same?
the same? Okay.
Yeah,
Just
so
curious.
It's a good question.
ERU equivalent residential
Right.
unit, so it's a flat fee for
Okay.
the resident.
Still behind you.
Just a question along what people are gonna be paying, if you aren't gonna do the authority, but instead raise millage, what would the increase in millage have to be to fund what needs to be done?
1 mil is about 225. To complete the $1 million worth of project, we have to raise significantly. But if we at least wanted to get to the 300 some thousand above, it would have to be at least 2 mil.
But we'd also have to be looking at the largest, landowners not contributing anything again.
Right.
You know, that would be the backdrop of that. The they wouldn't be putting anything towards that.
But the Woodland schools, that would just come back on our school taxes.
I don't think we've not talked about that.
Yeah.
And as far as churches, they're both struggling. I mean, one has a population of 300 right now. I don't know what the other one is, but they're both struggling. I know they can't afford it.
Well, one may go away,
What?
one may go away. The merger's coming out on October 23rd, so no one knows that.
Correct.
Well, the school just went up, also, so that is, we've discussed it, but we just really want to hear input to see the best way to go. I think you had a question as well.
Yes, so am I understanding that none of these projects can take place until 2026? Is that what I'm hearing?
So as of right now, all of our allotted projects that were budgeted have been completed. Now, if there is emergencies that can pop up, we will have to address those. We have had several emergencies already pop up that were not on budget, that were not budgeted, that we had to take care of. But in regards to the allotted budgeted projects.
So I'm looking at another winter and another rainy season. Oh, my goodness. And the borough doesn't have any kind, like, people have homeowners insurance. Isn't there some kind of insurance for boroughs?
We do have insurance, but in regards to individual properties, no.
Even though the municipality owns,
We don't insure our storm sewers, sanitary sewers, those aren't insured. Like our physical buildings, our equipment, that type of stuff is. And I'd be more than happy to talk with you after too. I know we talked on the phone in regards to your particular situation. And then Danny was recently out there and we had a geologist out there, so you're more than welcome to stick around and. Please visit us. Anything else? Thank you everyone for your time. Get pretty close to the time we said, so. Hopefully everyone hard at home and have a nice evening. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Let's take advantage of
So nice to meet you.
Very dry. And so when we bought the property. The estate owners, the purchase.
You should check it out again. I know the problem we have. It's not everything
Inside. You got anybody now? But we won't open up. We gotta get. And it's.
Denny, bring it on.
Oh, my goodness.
Whenever. I would never. Oh, well, you know, so I feel your pain.
It's rain. Last time, I wanted to stop it from coming.
But then you
got like, I was afraid for this.
Yeah.
So there's gonna be a rain, then the water. Okay.
Here, whenever there's a power.
Right.
No, it's gonna get done. We were gonna just change it to this stuff, and then it's something.
Okay.
So we probably will contact them. So I said, I'm gonna take you. So let's. Okay. Fill it up. You wanna know?
Put the water back in.
Because.
Let it go.
Yeah.